Hi, class. Hello, Professor Brownlee. The topic for our group presentation is Women in Military Combat Assignments. Women have been involved in the U.S. military since 1775. This was Deborah Sampson. She was one of the first women to enlist while disguised as a man. She served in a light infantry unit fighting in many battles. Her gender was later discovered after she's wounded in battle. Many women contributed to the Civil War, whether it was through nursing, spying, or physically fighting on the battlefield. Cathay Williams, who enlisted as William Cathay, was the first African American woman to serve the U.S. military. She was later discharged when a surgeon discovered her gender. Belle Boyd began her career as a spy and a messenger at the young age of 17. By the time she was 20, she became famous in the United States, to which people called her the Cleopatra of the Confederacy. Dr. Mary Edwards Walker was a surgeon and spy and was the first and only woman to receive the Medal of Honor. After the Spanish-American War, Congress establishes the Army and Navy Nurse Corps, giving women official military status for the first time, although only during wartime. In 1917, with the start of World War I and newer technology available, women filled new roles such as clerk, translator, draftsman, fingerprint expert, and signal corps girls who would receive every order for troop movement first. At the end of the wartime emergency, except for a few hundred nurses, all the women are discharged. During the World War II, approximately 400,000 women serve in non-combat roles, including as mechanics, pilots, and ambulance drivers. 87 women are taken prisoners of war by the Japanese and all survived, but the last 67 were kept prisoners for 3 years. After war's end, many women return to civilian life eagerly, but some women have new ambitions after the war has shown that service women contribute greatly to the defense of the nation. In 1948, Congress passes the Women's Armed Services Integration Act, permitting women to serve as permanent members of the military. In 1976, the first women are admitted to four of the five service academies: West Point, the U.S. Naval Academy, U.S. Coast Guard, and the Air Force Academy. During Desert Storm in 1991, 41,000 service women deployed to the Middle East. Congress authorizes women to fly in combat missions and serve on combat ships on 1991. Until 1993, only 67% of the positions in the Army were open to women. In 1998, Captain Kathleen McGrath becomes the first woman to command the U.S. Navy warship, and female fighter pilots fly combat missions for the first time. There has been a very brief introduction to the history of women in military combat assignments. Thank you.
How combat affects women. Nations usually measure the cost of war in dollars, lost production, or the numbers of soldiers killed or wounded, but rarely do military establishments attempt to measure the cost of war in terms of individual suffering. Psychiatric breakdown remains one of the most costly items of war when expressed in human terms. Indeed, for the combatant, in every major war fought in this century, there has been a greater probability of becoming a psychiatric casualty than of being killed by enemy fire. A psychiatric casualty is a combatant who is no longer able to participate in combat due to mental debilitation. Combat and military sexual trauma experiences affect women and put women at risk of drug-related disorders, post-traumatic stress disorders, which includes flashbacks, nightmares or severe anxiety, and uncontrollable thoughts about the event. Also, higher levels of general psychiatric distress, like, for example, eating pattern changes, physical changes that are unexplained, including headache, constipation, diarrhea, chronic pain, and rumbling stomach. Frequently provoke to anger, developing obsessive compulsive behavior, chronic fatigue, excessive tiredness or no energy, forgetful memory problems, , shying away from social activities. and more frequent somatic complaints. Somatic symptom disorders involves a person having a significant focus on physical symptoms such as pain, weakness, or shortness of breath that results in major distress or problems in functioning. The individual has excessive thoughts, feelings, and behaviors relating to physical behaviors. As an example, in Iraq and Afghanistan, more than 1,000 military women have suffered injuries, and 40% of them have faced mental health conditions a year after the injury.
So, for my portion of the presentation, I'll be talking about advantages of women in combat assignments. So, there's an article with the Marine Corps that released a statement. The Corps has not released actual data from the experiment, only summaries. Mabus and other critics say it was not designed or executed in a way that would predict the effect on unit performances if women are allowed to compete against men for combat jobs. Outside of the task force experiment, the Corps' highest performing women theoretically would replace its lowest performing men, potentially increasing overall combat effectiveness. And so, in my opinion, with all the research I did, one of the most advantageous aspects of having women in combat jobs is that most of the combat missions are in countries like Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Saudi Arabia, places like that, where the leading religion is Muslim. And so a soldier, typically a man in combat jobs, speaking with a female is seen as disrespectful to them. So they can take more offense in that and resulting in causing more conflict instead of bringing peace. So it is easier and smarter to have a female in combat units for a more effective way to gather information for certain missions. As well as the Army, as a way to make the military as equal and as fair as possible for all the personnel in the military, they implemented a new PT test, with a physical training test, from the APFT to the ACFT. So it was the Army Physical Fitness Test, and now it's the Army Combat Fitness Test as of October 1st of this year. And so basically it levels the playing field for both females and males in the military, therefore taking away from the factor of it being unfair for women to be in combat jobs because it's easier for them to pass the PT test.
Hello, my name is Jonathan and I'm going to be talking about the disadvantages that women face in the military services. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the physical problems. As you know, statistically, women are smaller, less strong, and lighter than male soldiers, which indicates that they are in disadvantage at the moment of undertaking some task combat as hand-to-hand combat, which indicates that they has to be discarded from this type of operation and from special forces which require versatility. Another problem is hygiene and health. As you know, long periods without bathing and in constant contact with water and mud has shown that women start to acquire the similar disease related to their genital tract, mostly parasitosis. Women's cycles. A study carried out showed that the 90% of women showed a decrease on their capacities 1 week before they start the menstrual periods. Another problem is the physical attraction. As you know, the attraction that women provoke in men is inevitable in their opinion, and much more so in long periods of isolation in which sexual self-satisfaction is allowed. According to the stories, this relaxes the trope, reduces stress, and keep the right mood. When women are present, this behavior changes and seems to be directed only for sexual purposes. Another problem is the pregnancy relationships secretly or not have the consequence of pregnancy. If the woman decides to maintain it, she will have to be removed from her position, and extraordinary occasion after giving birth they return to incorporate. Another problem is the interaction with the local citizen of the country where they fight. Given that the vast majority of combat actions were carried in countries with a Muslim orientation, be it moderate or radical, deploying women in combat campus of Iraq and Afghanistan has generated numerous problems as they never manages to impose the desired respect between them, the local men one they must control. One of the most important disadvantages of the woman in the military service is the sexual assault. As more women integration into previously all men jobs and the unit has increased, sexual assault cases within the military soared. Sexual assaults include rape and other forms of unwanted sexual contact. Between October 2012 and June 2013, more than 3,500 sexual assault cases were officially reported in the armed services. There was a 50% increase over the same period the previous year. Only about 300 patients, however, went to court. A separate Department of Defense report then estimated that 26,000 members of the armed services, both men and women, were sexual assault victims in 2012. Another Department of Defense report released in 2013 revealed that the 20% of all women experience military unwanted sexual contact. Victims say that they did not report a sexual assault fearing retaliation by the tracker or believing the commanding officer will do nothing. Thank you.
Women in combat during present time. Before the combat, during the Revolutionary War, women were utilized for simple tasks such as nurses, seamstresses, and cooks to provide for the men in the military. As time goes on, Army rules and regulations concerning women and the standards for men and women in the military began to equalize during the early 1970s. In fact, women were not granted military status until the 1970s. Therefore, legendary women broke these gender barriers to fight in combat. The first African American woman to become U.S. Armed pilot is Lieutenant Marcella Hayes in November 1970. Lieutenant Hayes completed her flight training at the Aviation Center in Alabama at 23 years old. Another woman that made a huge impact is Linda Bray. In 1989, she became the first lady to command in combat during Operation Just Cousin Pamela. Truly, her achievement as a captain prompted a reevaluation in women's roles in the military and recognition of their capabilities. Immediately, the Army utilized women to their fullest potential in Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm during the Gulf War. As a matter of fact, this operation had the largest call of women since World War II. Of over 24,000 women served during the operation.
Alright, you guys, welcome to the end of the presentation. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned anything from the information my previous teammates have shared to you. I'm going to end off the presentation with a basic generalization of women. We all know throughout human history, women has always been the inferior gender. But nowadays, women are now becoming more and more equal to men. It's always a long, hard fight for women to do what they want to do because they're always seen as fragile ones, the housewives and things like that. And women going through the military is obviously much harder, but we had women like Miss Sampson, which was the first woman in the military. We have Miss William Cath, which is the first African American woman in the military, and then we have Dr. Walker, she is the first and only woman that has ever gotten Medal of Honor. And just like men, women go through traumatic experiences with in the military, just like men. They've gotten PTSD, but obviously women is a little more different because they also experience sexual harassment. So women entering the military just really branches out into other problems women have in society. And the more our world evolves, the more women becomes more and more a part of us, and we all become gender equal and things like that. You know, women, the path women have taken in order to get where they are today is truly exemplary. And you know, with them, with both sides, both genders working together, we can achieve ultimate greatness. I want to thank you guys for listening to this presentation. I hope you all have a great day.